And welcome back to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's Pokemon Team Creation Series is actually a twofer. And what I mean by that is it actually fell under my personal list of the ones I do, and I'm just rotating. I'm like, okay, I want to just do one of the ones I want to do. And it was a suggestion by someone else. This one is both me and JRC, who asked the question, assuming you were to anthropomorphize King Ghidorah, what is the Pokemon team of King Ghidorah? Now, before I go into the list, keep in mind, I do not design a list for balance competitively. I do not design a list I once had someone say, there's too many legendaries on this team. Well, I disagree because that's thematically what fit on the team. I think that was from Virgil. So I'm like, look, I'm not creating a balanced team. I'm not creating a competitive team. I'm not creating a team that's supposed to make sense in a Pokemon world standpoint. I'm creating a team that makes sense based on what we know of the character. If something about that character ultimately lends itself to a stronger Mon, I'm going to put that Mon on the team. So I say all that to let you know that this became a pretty heavy team. Let's just get into it. Let's get into it. So look, when you're talking about a King Ghidorah based team, you got to go with basically the King Ghidorah Pokemon, Hydreigon. Let's get you up there. Hydreigon. Look, that is King Ghidorah right there. I mean, yeah, is it a 1-to-1? No, but it's a 3-headed Hydra flying dark dragon that is highly aggressive and devourer of many creatures. So, yeah, and it's a pseudo-legendary, so its power output is extremely high. However, thanks to Scarlet and Violet, we actually do have a Mecha King Ghidorah now Pokemon, and that is Iron Jugulus, who is, obviously, we know it's a Paradox Pokemon. It is, by all accounts, just a cybernetic Hydreigon, which does make it a little boring in many ways. While Violet has a couple things over Scarlet, I do think Scarlet got definitely the better end of the stick when it came to a lot of things, including their Paradox Pokemon, because the Scarlet Paradox Pokemon actually look like cool alternate versions and not just a robotic version of something. With a few mild exceptions, like Iron Valiant looks a little different than something else. Either way, but look, you got your Mecha King Ghidorah, you got your standard Ghidorah. Ironically, even in lore, this makes sense in terms of strength-wise, because Mecha King Ghidorah was actually a little weaker than standard King Ghidorah, because the central head was the missing head, and it's believed the central head of Ghidorah is the head that actually is like the dominant head that controls everything. Where the other two heads are more like excess limbs that are just sentient and can do things on their own. So there's that. But beyond that, now I had to actually think of other things that went with Ghidorah besides the two obvious ones. And one of the ones I definitely lean towards is that Ghidorah is a destroyer, first and foremost, an eater of worlds, a destroyer of worlds. So I need a Mon that could theoretically end the world or had an insatiable appetite. And with that, I came down to two Mon. Now, one of these Mon is a pretty good representation of this. I went with Yveltal. Now, Yveltal is the destruction Pokemon, but let's be honest, it is the Pokemon representation of death. This is death in the Pokemon world. And in lore, Xerneas and Yveltal have to keep balance. Xerneas is the Pokemon of life and creation. But if things were left unchecked, it would literally just overwhelm the world with life. Life would be so abundant that it would basically collapse in on itself. Whereas with the Yveltal, it's actually the other way. It absorbs all the life force and energy from around it and to hatch and form to form the cocoon and hatch out of the cocoon. In essence, it could rob the entire planet of life if it were really allowed to, which is exactly what Ghidorah more or less does. It absorbs energy. It once absorbed so much energy from the sun, it actually dimmed the sun for a moment. And this thing is literally a planet world ender. So Yveltal makes a lot of sense in that regard. But if we're going to go for other very powerful Dragonmon or just powerful Mon that have a massive appetite that cannot be sated and could destroy things, we have Guzzlord. Guzzlord being the Ultra Beast from Ultra Space, who is a dark dragon and just has ceaseless hunger. To the point where it doesn't seem to excrete waste, it just seems to convert it into more energy. It is just constantly eating and constantly powerful. Add on the fact it does technically have 2 arms that are also mouths, so that works towards the Ghidorah angle as well. Add on to the fact that, in 1 second here, that like another mon we're going to have on the show up in just a second, because it comes from an alternate reality, it can actually double for the Ghidorah references by being a representation of the anime Ghidorah that we got in the Godzilla anime series, the one that actually lived in a different dimension and had to be summoned through like wormholes or ultra space wormholes in this case. So this has actually got a couple references going for it, which I like that. I think that works out well. Speaking of which, the other one we have on the team, and this one has a bit more going for it than even the Guzzlord thing, I think, is Giratina, particularly Origin Form Giratina, because it just looks cooler. Giratina, we know, lives in the Distortion World, which is a separate pocket dimension. Right out the gate, anime Ghidorah reference. This also is the more serpentine, like the anime Ghidorah's heads are, like we see. But beyond that, also, it's a Pokemon that manipulates. They say it manipulates antimatter, but what it really manipulates is gravity. Everything that we've seen in both the anime and in the game representations, it manipulates gravity, not antimatter. You have time, space, and gravity seem to be like the 3 fundamental things of like the universe, and that's what Ghidorah manipulates. And Ghidorah is famous for gravity beams. They're really just electrical energy blasts, but they're called gravity beams. Add on to the fact that Ghidorah, in some interpretations, like the anime version, can literally warp space-time and gravity, manipulate, like literally distort gravity around it. So add on the fact that Giratina and Hydreigon and Iron Juggler is actually very passive, but and Yveltal and Guzzlord are very hyper-aggressive mon, and yeah, Ghidorah falls under that too. It works out well. But the last mon on the team, I knew I needed an extraterrestrial of some kind. It simply just made sense due to the fact that Ghidorah, by all accounts, except for the anime version, is an extraterrestrial. It's not, despite the fact it looks like a dragon, it's actually not a dragon. It's just an extraterrestrial creature with the appearance of a dragon hydra creature. So I needed an extraterrestrial, and ultimately I had to go with Xerneas on this. Now, I didn't go with the Turnamax Xerneas, and the reason for that is very simple. There was no real reason for a Turnamax Xerneas. But I went with Xerneas. Now, why? Why would I go with Xerneas of all things? Well, A, it's among only a handful of extraterrestrial Pokemon. I mean, when we really break extraterrestrial alien Pokemon down, what did I have at my disposal? I had Deoxys, but that didn't really work with Ghidorah. We know that the Clefairy and Jigglypuff line allegedly come from space, as does Staryu and Starmie allegedly. Neither of those really worked. We have the alien-looking one, literally the Roswell alien-looking ones from Unova, as well as Minior lives in the atmosphere. It's not technically an alien. They've kind of cut down on the alien ones lately, actually. I mean, you have Mon that live in the atmosphere, but not actual alien ones. Although I suppose the fact that Mon can evolve with moonstones means that, in theory, those are moon rocks, and that those Mon that evolve with moonstones must have extraterrestrial DNA, I suppose. Maybe that's what the lore is supposed to be with that. Except for the fact that Staryu and Starmie also said to be extraterrestrial in nature, evolved with water stones. So that kind of throws that theory out the window. But beyond the fact that this guy comes from the stars, he's also, first off, a very powerful Pokemon and a very menacing Pokemon. He's the one that caused so much Dynamaxing over the Kalos region alone that it was causing the Darkest Day. Or was it dark? I think it's called Darkest Day. This is actually a little, and he was still like causing havoc and, just being, dangerous and whatnot. And it took, 2 heroic Pokemon, Zamazenta and Zacian, to defeat him. But that kind of actually goes towards the idea that Ghidorah terraforms planets it's on, particularly the Legendary series. Ghidorah, literally just being awoken and out of the ice allowed it to cause like giant ass typhoons and tropical storms. But beyond that, Ghidorah is sent by the aliens of Planet X to terraform the planet and for their own usage. So the fact is that because Turnamax is causing so much energy output in Kalos, it actually is kind of a terraformer in and of itself. Because I knew I wanted something that referenced that, the terraforming aspect of Ghidorah. And there aren't a lot of Mon that really do that, because Any mon that does that has to be on a seriously high level of power scaling, because lore-wise it would have to be able to literally affect the very fabric of the weather. And while you do have some of that, like Kyogre and Groudon, neither of them are really a Ghidorah. And you couldn't do Rayquaza because that actually negates weather effects. So that's actually the opposite of Ghidorah. So you needed a mon that actually had some sort of planetary level effect that could affect not just its location, but in theory the world. And if push came to shove, Eternatus could, in theory, affect that. Now, generally speaking, it wouldn't probably affect the entire Pokemon universe world, but it could definitely affect the general Kalos region, which would be an equivalent of what Ghidorah did, where its storm literally was just localized to a giant chunk of the world, just not the whole world. Either way, they'll add on to the fact that it's also a poison type, which means that you can get the kind of the poisonous, destructive nature of Ghidorah in there too. I like this as the final representation on the team. So yes, this team is composed more or less of legendaries, pseudo-legendaries, and near legendaries. Is this a balanced team? Well, okay. Is this a proper team? Probably not. Is this a balanced team? Well, it's got 4 dragons on there. 4 dark types on there. Let's see here. 1 ghost, 1 poison, 2 flying. Fairies would mercilessly demolish this team, with the exception of maybe Eternatus, who would know some poison type moves naturally. Yeah, fairies would demolish this team. Otherwise, I mean, other dragons, they'd go tit for tat. Ice types would also be a problem for this. So it's got the standard dragon problems for like a balanced team. Other than that, though, I mean, you have 2 dragon dark types, which, I mean, besides fairy, don't have any supreme weaknesses. Dragon helps mitigate the weakness to fighting, and bug. I mean, they don't have any special resistance to ice or dragon, so there's that. Then you get 2 flying dark types, who, again, no special resistance to fairy, but the flying helps resist the dark type weakness. I don't know about the bug. As for the electric, the only thing they got to really worry about is electric on that. And they got immunities from psychic, all 4 of those guys. So the fact, and ground for the flying. So the fact that they're able to go into a fight with immunities is actually very important. Same with Giratina, who's got 2 immunities thanks to the ghost typing, with both normal and fighting. Neither types would be very useful against the dragon anyway, but still, 2 immunities is nothing to laugh at. And then you have to deal again with fairy types, ice types, and other dragon types. But fortunately, the dragon type helps mitigate the ghost and dark weakness. And then you got Eternatus, who, because he's poison, it's the only dragon on this team who actually stands a good fighting shot against fairy type mon. It's not, but unfortunately, no dragon attack's going to get through onto a fairy, sadly. But, that is what it is. Other than that, though, you still got the dragon and ice weaknesses. The weaknesses of ground are kind of mitigated thanks to the dragon, though, onto poison. And steel is not strong, but it resists dragon. So, I don't know, take that for what that's worth. Otherwise, is it a perfectly balanced team? Hell no. Is it a powerful team, just stat-wise alone? Oh, hell yes. All these guys at minimum have a stat total of 570 or up. So the combined stat total of this entire team is somewhere in the near 4,000 range. No, not near 4,000, but like 3,500. I think theoretically the highest stat total you could have on any team, no megas allowed or anything like that, it would be all legendaries, which with like stat totals like 680, I think is the legendary line, which means... Actually, no, it would be closing in on 4,000. Now, this is not quite 4,000, mind you, but it's like 3,700 something. So, yeah, it's still a very powerful team nonetheless. This is, though, my opinion on what I think King Ghidorah's Pokemon team would be. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with this team, or if you disagree with this team. Let me know about that, too. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later, because I got the next What If to do and the box office. So... stay tuned for those. Have a good one.